The floorboards groaned under his feet. Each step echoed in the silence, a constant reminder of his solitude. The air hung heavy, thick with the stench of mildew and regret. He was a prisoner in his own home, his cell the sprawling mansion that now felt more like a tomb. The grand halls, once brimming with life and laughter, now whispered with unseen horrors, their voices a chilling symphony of his sins. He wandered from room to room, each one a mirror reflecting a distorted image of his past. The scent of her perfume lingered, faint but unmistakable, a cruel reminder of what he had lost. His reflection, a gaunt and haunted stranger, stared back at him from the dusty glass, his eyes hollow, his face etched with the deep lines of guilt. He couldn't escape the feeling that he was being watched, judged by unseen eyes that burned with cold fury. The mansion stood on a windswept cliff, its silhouette a jagged scar against the stormy sky. The sea raged below, mirroring the turmoil within him. He was trapped, both physically and mentally, in this desolate place. The once vibrant gardens had withered and died, choked by neglect and despair. Thorny vines now clawed at the walls like skeletal fingers trying to break free from their earthen grave. He had become a recluse, shunning all contact with the outside world, his only companions the shadows that danced in the flickering candlelight. The nights were the worst. As darkness descended, so did the whispers. They slithered from the shadows, wrapping around him like icy tendrils, whispering his name, accusing, condemning. Sleep offered no escape, only nightmares that left him gasping for breath, drenched in a cold sweat. He was haunted by the past, his every waking moment consumed by the memory of his actions and their devastating consequences. He moved through the house like a ghost, his footsteps muffled by the thick carpets. Each step he took seemed to echo through the empty halls, a reminder of the life that once filled these rooms. The house, now a shadow of its former self, mirrored his own existence. The silence was deafening, broken only by the creaking of the old house and the pounding of his own heart. It was as if the walls themselves were whispering secrets, secrets that he wished to forget, but couldn't. The weight of the silence pressed down on him, making it hard to breathe. It was the silence of guilt, heavy and suffocating, crushing him under its weight. Every corner of the house seemed to hold a memory, a reminder of the choices he had made. The silence was not just the absence of sound, but the presence of his own remorse, echoing in his mind. He longed to break free, to scream until his lungs burned, to confess his sins to the empty rooms, but the words wouldn't come. His voice was trapped, just like his emotions, tangled in a web of fear and regret. The silence was a prison, and he was its only inmate. They were trapped inside, a tangled knot of fear and remorse. Each day, the knot grew tighter, making it harder for him to think, to feel, to live. The silence fed on his despair, growing stronger with each passing moment. He had tried to outrun the guilt, to bury it deep within himself, but it was always there, lurking beneath the surface. No matter how far he ran, it followed him, a shadow that he couldn't escape. The more he tried to hide from it, the more it consumed him. It poisoned his every thought, his every action. The guilt was a constant presence, a dark cloud that hung over him, blocking out any light. It was a parasite, feeding on his soul, leaving him empty and hollow. He was a hollow shell, his life drained of all joy and purpose. The silence had taken everything from him, leaving him with nothing but his own torment. He looked out the window, but all he saw was the reflection of his own despair. He was adrift in a sea of despair, with no land in sight, no hope of rescue. The vast emptiness around him mirrored the emptiness inside him. He was lost, with no direction, no purpose, no hope. The silence was his constant companion, a cruel reminder of his isolation and the truth he couldn't escape. It was a relentless force, always there, always reminding him of his failures, his regrets, his sins. The weight of the silence was unbearable, but it was all he had left. Section 4. The Unseen Guest. One night, a new sound pierced the silence. It was a night like any other, or so he thought. The house, usually a sanctuary of peace, now felt like a stage set for a sinister play. It was a soft sound, barely audible at first, like the rustle of silk against wood. The kind of sound that could easily be dismissed as the house settling. But this was different. It carried a weight, a presence. He paused, his heart pounding in his chest, every sense on high alert. His breath quickened, and he could feel the adrenaline coursing through his veins. The silence that followed was deafening, amplifying his fear. The sound came again, closer this time, from the direction of the library. It was as if the very walls were whispering secrets, secrets that were not meant for human ears. He knew he was alone in the house, yet the feeling persisted that he was not alone, that something else was there with him, something unseen, something sinister. The air felt thick, almost tangible, as if it were pressing down on him. He crept towards the library, his hand trembling as he reached for the doorknob. Each step felt like an eternity, the floorboards creaking under his weight, echoing through the empty halls. The air grew colder as he pushed open the door, a chill that seemed to emanate from within the room itself. It was an unnatural cold, the kind that seeps into your bones and makes you shiver uncontrollably. He stepped inside, his eyes scanning the darkened shelves, searching for the source of the sound, the source of his unease. The library, once a place of knowledge and comfort, now felt like a labyrinth of shadows and hidden dangers. The hairs on the back of his neck stood on end, a primal instinct warning him of danger. He wasn't alone. He could feel it, a presence lurking just beyond the edge of his vision, watching, waiting. The unseen guest had made itself known. Section 5. Whispers in the dark. In the stillness of the night, when the world was cloaked in darkness, the whispers began. The whispers started subtly, soft murmurs that he initially dismissed as the wind whistling through the old house's cracks. The house, with its creaky wooden floors and cracked windows, seemed to breathe with a life of its own. But the whispers persisted, growing louder, more insistent, weaving their way into his thoughts, his dreams. Each night as he lay in bed with eyes wide open, the whispers grew more distinct, more personal. They were his name, spoken with a mixture of anger and sorrow, accusing him, reminding him of his sins. The voices seemed to come from the very walls, as if the house itself was condemning him. He tried to rationalize them away, but deep down, a chilling certainty began to take root. He wasn't imagining things, he was being haunted. The whispers were not just sounds, they were memories, echoes of a past he wished to forget. He tried to ignore the whispers, to block them out, but they were relentless. No matter how hard he pressed his hands against his ears, the voices penetrated, seeping into his very soul. They followed him everywhere he went, echoing through the empty halls, seeping from the walls themselves. The house had become a labyrinth of torment, each corner hiding a new whisper, a new accusation. They taunted him with his past, reminding him of the consequences of his actions, of the pain he had caused. Old photographs, once cherished, now served as painful reminders of his guilt. His grip on reality began to slip, his mind teetering on the precipice of madness. The line between the real and the imagined blurred, and he found himself questioning his own sanity. He was losing himself in a vortex of guilt and paranoia. The whispers had become a part of him, an inescapable torment that gnawed at his very being. Each day was a struggle, each night a battle against the unseen forces that sought to drag him into the abyss. He paced the dark rooms, shadows moving eerily around him, as if they were alive. The whispers grew louder, more demanding, and he felt the weight of his past sins crushing him. In a desperate attempt to find solace, he began to write, filling pages with frantic scribbles, hoping to make sense of the chaos within his mind. But the more he wrote, the more the whispers seemed to mock him, their voices intertwining with his thoughts. He stared at a flickering candle, its light casting haunting shadows on the walls. The whispers seemed to dance with the flames, their voices a constant reminder of his inescapable guilt. In the end, he found himself sitting in a dark corner, head in hands, consumed by the whispers. They had become his constant companions, a relentless reminder of the darkness that lurked within his soul. The house, once a place of refuge, had become a prison of his own making. The whispers in the dark were not just voices, they were the echoes of his own conscience, a haunting reminder of the past he could never escape. Section 6. The Face in the Mirror. One evening, as he stood before the ornate mirror in his bedroom, he noticed something unsettling. His reflection no longer mirrored his movements. It stood still, its eyes cold and accusing, boring into his soul. He blinked, but the image remained, a ghostly doppelganger mocking him from the other side of the glass. He reached out to touch the surface, his fingers passing through the cold, smooth surface. Panic surged through him. He stumbled back, knocking over a vase on his nightstand. The crash of shattering porcelain echoed through the silent room, but his reflection remained unchanged, its gaze never wavering. He was trapped in a waking nightmare, his sanity unraveling with each passing moment. The line between reality and hallucination blurred, leaving him lost in a terrifying labyrinth of his own guilt and fear. Section 7. Dancing with Madness. The mansion, once his sanctuary, became a battleground for his sanity. He saw her everywhere he looked, her face shimmering in the candlelight, her laughter echoing in the empty halls. He felt her presence beside him, cold and accusing, her touch sending shivers down his spine. He was losing his grip on reality, his mind fracturing under the weight of his guilt and the relentless onslaught of supernatural phenomena. He became a prisoner in his own mind, tormented by hallucinations and plagued by whispers that only he could hear. His nights were filled with terror, his days with a creeping dread that gnawed at the edges of his sanity. The guilt he had carried for so long had manifested into a tangible entity, a specter that haunted his waking hours and tormented his dreams. He was teetering on the brink of madness, his grasp on reality slipping further with each passing moment.